Hi, my name is Jeremy, and today I'm very happy to see you for this video on how to build a team of A players and scale your business. So thank you very much for taking this time out. But I would like to share with you that this topic is actually one where every business owner that I worked with feel that they have a problem in. How do I get the best people to work in my company? But before we go into this, let me just introduce you to you again this book Scaling Up, and the concepts that we're going to be talking about come from this book written by Vern Harnish, a very famous, world famous business teacher, and he's taught thousands of businesses on how to scale their business. And I work with Vern in the Asia Pacific region to help companies to implement the ideas in this book into their business. So this is who I am. My name is Jeremy. I'm a coach. I work with Vern to help companies to implement and to practice the Rockefeller habits so that they can scale their business in a very systematic and sustainable way. So, when we talk about this topic today on A players, right? Why is this a question that is so interesting? And it is really because that a lot of companies want to find these A players, but they can't find them, right? So today we're going to be asking ourselves this question: who are the A players? How do they look like? Because the first step to find an A player is to know how they are like. Who are they, right? How do we find them? Then the next question would be, why are they so hard to find, right? And the last one would be, once we have identified who these A players are, then how do we attract them? Because bear in mind, A players have got many choices. They can work anywhere they want. So how can we attract them and get them to the company? And we're going to be sharing on these three things. So, before we start, let me ask you a very important question, and you got to answer this honestly. Is this your biggest problem? Is finding A players for your company the biggest problem? You see, it is the biggest problem for so many of my clients. And every time we do a workshop, we ask them a survey, what is your biggest problem? And usually the answer is people. So, is this your biggest problem? Are you having problems finding the right people for the business? Are you happy? Or are the people in your company driving you crazy? Now, if that is the biggest problem, then the more important question is, why is this your biggest problem? Why? How did this problem come about? How did this become a problem that is bugging you? So, I want to share with you the number one reason why so many companies struggle with people is because they lack this word intentionality, which means how deliberate are you in finding the right people, or how deliberate are you in creating the kind of environment where the right people will get attracted. You see, so many businesses, they just say, okay, we just grab whoever we can, right? It's very urgent, we need people. When we are growing, we need people. When somebody leaves, we need people, and they just go and grab the next available person that they hope, and the keyword here is they hope, that it works out well. But what if it doesn't, right? So how intentional you are in building this people strategy that will lead to you having the right people to scale your business. Now remember, scaling up is a long-term thing. It's not a sudden tomorrow thing. So you need to actually intentionally build the kind of environment that will attract these people that will help you to scale your business. Now, what happens when we don't have intentionality? When we are not intentional in building that A player team, then what we normally end up with are just HR policies. Now, HR policies are important, but they are more about a guideline on how to get people to work or how people should work. It is not a strategy because it doesn't actually tell you the long term plan. How do we actually create that kind of a value that we want in this business? How do we systematically put in place the kind of choices that we're going to make to get A players in? So when you only have a policy, what you end up with is playing checkers and not chess. What do we mean? Now, do you play checkers? If you play checkers, you will know that every seat on the checkerboard is actually the same. They can do all the same things, right? So there's nothing unique. So that's actually how we hire people. When we are short term and say we just want to fill this or we just need to get this done, then we'll just look at the market and say, okay, as long as you've got a minimum requirement, you can do what the previous guy did, or you can do what the job description says, we'll take you, right? But it's not chess. Chess actually looks not just at what the person can do, but the uniqueness and how it complements everybody to build a team that can do much more than just an individual. Why? because they are unique. So when you have a short-term policy, you will be playing checkers. But if you want to have a long-term strategy to say, how do I build this company to be so special, then you need to play chess. The second thing about not having intentionality is that we just focus on working the people, but we fail to inspire them. Now, all the research has shown that people, when inspired, when they find meaning in their work, right, their productivity can go up by as much as 28%. Adam Grant, an American professor, has done this study that if people start to feel or can see that their work benefits another human being, their productivity can go up as high as 28%. So Jack Welch, the legendary CEO of General Electric, actually says that we as leaders should be Chief Meaning Officer, CMO, not just the CEO. How do we inspire people? Because when you have that, you start to build a culture where the best people want to come and work for you. And lastly, when we are not intentional or we don't have a long-term strategy, we lose intentionality in winning. Means we hire people to just get the job done. We don't hire people with the goal that eventually we're going to beat everybody. We're going to beat the competition. But that's long run. Just getting the work done is to get by the day so the business does not collapse. But what we really want to talk about scaling up is a long-term, sustainable winning strategy. And that is why so many companies are not able to find the A players is because they don't have that understanding that you have to be very intentional to make this happen. So what does intentional means? Intentional means you really find the right person and you put him on the right seat to do the right thing, right? So many companies I work with, they just put that person fit into the job description, and it's true. I understand some constraints that some companies, some clients of mine, they operate in a country where talent is scarce. So finding the right person is really difficult. So they tend to grab the person that they can find. But again, like what I said, that's not being intentional. That's just filling in the blanks, filling in the gaps so that the business does not collapse tomorrow. So that is fine if you need to get things going, but in the long run, do you actually understand, like a football coach mapping everything out? What is the unique roles and skills that you need to have in order when you put everything together, you have a winning team? So the best analogy I can give to you is to use football because it really talks about finding that right person, putting that person in the right position, and then telling that person what is the right thing you must do, right? And this is actually where it's so difficult because a lot of companies, they may get the right person, but they put the person on the wrong seat. Or they get the right person, put that person on the right seat, and that person end up doing the wrong things because it's not spelled out carefully. So this is the three rights here are so difficult, and the only way is to be very intentional, slowly putting in piece by piece. But take note, because you are not doing this just for tomorrow. You are building a long-term winning strategy, a team that can scale your business. This is absolutely important. You got to really find the right person and put that person on the right seats. Sometimes you may even have to create that right seat and then design the right things for that person to do. So now we have talked about intentionality. Let's talk about how do we identify A players, right? So these are the three main characteristics of an A player. And the first one is that every A player is equal to three non-A players. Means they are so good, they're so productive, they're so skillful, they're so talented. That means you have put the person on the right seat so that he can use his unique talent to create three times more value than a person who is not on the right seat, right? So this is very important. And one of my clients shared his experience when I was working with him on developing an A-player strategy. And this business owns factories, and they told me that the factory manager said that, yes, I fully support this idea because we went through a period of time where we had to let go a lot of people, but we were very intentional about finding and keeping those people we think will really, really help us. And they were able to produce three times the results even after they let go about 40 to 50% of their people. It's really about holding the right people and putting them on the right seats. The second characteristic of an A player is this thing called grit or resilience. Now, why is this important? How does it define an A player? It's really because every business goes up and down, right? You don't want people who are just there for the good times, who only perform because everything is going well. Because, like it or not, some point of time in your scaling up journey, you're going to be hitting a roadblock, and you want people to who are able to fight through that roadblock and overcome things with you. And that is actually so precious because when in a crisis, you need all hands on deck. You need people who will say, we are not going to run away, we're not going to go for something better, but we believe that we can overcome this together. And in order for them to be motivated to fight that battle for you, the next most important thing is of an A player is that they are aligned to your core values. How many times you have gotten people who are like high performers but they don't follow your core values? They create all kinds of problems for you and for the team, right? So that person can't be an A player unless they are aligned. They believe in what you do and they will wholeheartedly want to help you, right? Because remember, the first two things, it's not easy to produce three times what people produce. It's not easy to fight and overcome difficulties when business is not good, right? So why would they want to do that with you? The only reason why they want to do that with you is because they are part of your culture. They believe in who you are. So the core values alignment is so important in shaping what we call an A player. So now, how do we attract these A players, right? We have identified the reason why people don't have A players, and that's because they lack intentionality. Then we have identified how an A player looks like, and now let's talk about how do we attract these A players. So there are three things that we can do, and the first one is to build a culture that attract A players. Second is A players attract A players, what we call you need to create a virtuous cycle. And third thing, which is difficult, is you need to get rid of the C players. So let's talk about them one by one. Look at this picture. You got a guy in the middle here where everybody is following, right? He stands out. So what we need to do about A players is to really help them to stand out because people need icons and people need heroes and people need stories if you want to build a culture. There's no point putting your core values on the wall, on the website, because nobody's going to look at them. People will only be motivated by stories and real life role models. So, what I want you to do, this is something you can do because I work with my clients to do this, and that is really to look at the A players, the people you think you really respect and admire in your company. Take out one or two key attributes that they have, right? And tell a story. Use these attributes to build a story for people to follow and tell these stories. And every time you have an opportunity, tell these stories because people need stories. And what's good is a role model if nobody talks about the role model, right? So what you want is you want people to say, wow, these A players are rewarded, they're recognized. How do I become like them? So if you do that, you start to build a player culture where people look up to A players, people love these stories, and they start to shape their attitude around these A players. Because bear in mind, what is culture? Culture is really the beliefs of the people and how they behave, right? So by giving them role models, you're shaping how they behave, how they believe, and helping them to see how they should behave. How should an A player behave? So after you've built a culture and you've got some A players coming in, what you will start to see is what we call a virtuous cycle. So the opposite of a vicious cycle, which is bad things leading to bad things, is that a virtuous cycle means good things leading to good things. So what you want is that A players will constantly attract A players because A players enjoy working with A players, right? And this is taken from an interview by the CEO of Linear Technologies. This company is also known as the company that no one leaves because the culture is so good. I'm fortunate to have a friend who worked in there who shared with me about a story about nobody really want to quit until they retire, and they retire with a lot of sadness in their hearts. And the CEO said that the reason why they have this culture is because really smart people like to work with smart people, and they are not afraid to hire smarter people, right? Smart people hiring more smart people creates that cycle that just creates even more value for people and for the company. So that's actually what you want to do. Let the A players attract the A players. And the last thing you need to do, and that's absolutely important but also very difficult, is to get rid of the C players. how do we define a C player? A C player is somebody whose performance is very high, but it's a total jerk, not in line with the core values. And in fact, these are the people who give you all the heartache. How many of you have got somebody like that in your company today? Every company that I work with on their people strategy, they always have somebody that's holding the boss hostage, right? And the boss refuses or doesn't dare to fire this person because this person's results are so good, right? And this person knows it, and they actually use that as an advantage for them to get away with the kind of behavior that you don't want in your business. Now, how many of you are in this situation? Be honest. Because every CEO I worked with, right, faces this, including our own company, right? When we implemented the Rockefeller habits and scaling up, we have to face up to some very difficult decisions because there were some C players. So imagine we finally reached a stage where we got rid of our number one sales business unit head. Number one. Was not an underperformer. In fact, she was the highest sales for that year, but she was somebody that nobody wanted to work with, and everybody just feels so put off, and it just drains the energy out of the company, right? Whether is it subordinates, whether it's bosses, or anybody who worked with this person, just felt so difficult, right? So eventually we let this person go, and we had to rebuild that team. So don't let that happen to your company where the poison from this C place already spread so deeply that the only way is for you to rebuild everything, get rid of everybody and rebuild. Well, that's what we did, and was painful. But the whole idea is get rid of these C players so that the A players will thrive, so that the A players will be attracted. Because A players don't want to work with C players. Now, C players want to work with C players, but C players want to work with C players that don't perform as well as them. So they create that downward spiral. A players create that upward spiral because A players attract smarter people. C players attract people that are worse than them. So that's the kind of effect that C players will have in your business. So get rid of them. So before we end, I want to just leave you with an exercise that I work with clients. And this exercise is actually very important because even though it looks simple, but it actually goes very deep in answering this question: are you having the right person on the right seat doing the right thing? So this is how you use this exercise. First, on the left, you have a list of functions, and then you have a list of outcomes, indicators, we are KPI or actions to take, and whether is this the right person. So what I normally work with clients is to identify the outcomes first, because what we really want to do is to say, what is the most important outcome? We're so busy every day, but what is that most important impact that this function needs to produce apart from everything else? Then the second thing is, what critical actions will lead to that outcome, and then is this the best person to take this action? So one of the clients that I work with, this is a company where the CEO is actually very famous on social media. She's everywhere, right? Everybody knows her, but she's doing so many things. But she's grow the business, she's a public face, and she has also got to raise funds. So when we work this exercise, we have to ask this honest question to say, for this season, the head of the company, what's really the most important outcome? There's so many things this person needs to do, and after the discussion, we said that is to raise funds for the upcoming development, right? So what are the critical actions to raise funds, and is she the best person? Is she the only person that can do these actions? And we went down the list for every critical function to identify the key outcome, the key action, and whether is that the right person. And sometimes you may realize that the person you have currently might not be the best person to be taking this action and executing these results. And that's why this exercise is very sensitive. But do it with an open mind and with the agreement that we're all doing this because we want to put the right person on the right seat to do the right thing. Now, you may need my help because one of my clients did this on their own. It's a family business, and when they started to talk about the roles, they actually got into a fist fight, right? Because it got so sensitive about yours, mine, and that's where you might need to be very sensitive, or you might need a third person, who is objective to help you through this exercise. But trust me, when you get this exercise done, you will have the right person on the right seat to do the right thing. Now, thank you very much for listening in for this video. I hope I've shared something useful. These are really some of the examples that I work with clients. I've seen companies struggle with, that maybe you are also struggling with. And I hope some of these thoughts and some of these lessons will help you to clarify what you need to do next, right? If you want that tool, please get in touch with us at grow@growthcatalyst.com.sg, and we will send it to you so that you can start working on putting the right person on the right seat to do the right thing in your company. Now, this is not easy. If you need more help, get in touch with us, because we've got other tools, including a diagnostic test for you to see, is your company ready to scale, right? The report will tell you whether are you ready to scale and what you need to do next. And also get in touch with us if you think this video is useful, and we can introduce you to more free videos like this, and then you can actually watch these videos and get more tools from us, and then find a way and really scale your business. So thank you very much for listening in. Enjoy sharing this with you, and I hope to see you again. Thank you and goodbye.